Well, it wasn't obvious. What I found was one of the richest people on earth who had stolen his company 30 years ago. He was one of the original oil oligarchs. And even though he's Harvard MBA and lives in the U.S., he's Russian, but he's a citizen here. I handwrote him a note. Now this is after 2.5 years of failure, because I couldn't get anybody to get the dime, and I was busy writing checks. That's one thing I forgot to say. I was the check writer and all this to keep this whole dream alive. And that stopped being fun about 18 months into it, but it was what it was. And so I handwrote this guy a note, and I said, I understand Putin stole your company at one time, and now he's trying to steal mine. Oh, well, that struck a nerve, because every month for 2 years, a Russian oligarch just happened to be in Charlotte, wanted to meet with me. If you follow what the Russians are trying to do in the Arctic, they're trying to own the Arctic, right? The infrastructure, the shipping lanes, everything. The mining rights, everything. Well, here I was going to own the Arctic at least from a ones and zeros, because this project is called Fertility Networks, but in the Arctic it's called the New Panama Canal Project. Instead of ships, we're moving ones and zeros. And this is the modern day world. And so I handwrote this note, that got me an invite. He actually, he reached out after a day or two and said, hey, come to Manhattan, where all the rich people apparently live. And he said, come to Manhattan, let's talk about this. Here's how the world works. I've written this big memorandum that had to be 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, and everything. No need. He asked 10 minutes worth of questions. I gave 15 minutes worth of honest answers because I knew he was going to check on all of them. He looked at me after 15 minutes and said, Robert, I'm in. That was $600 million worth of commitments on a 15-minute conversation. And he never backed away. We spent $500 million so far in Alaska. So Alaska is up. So all parts of Alaska that haven't been fiber wired, the entire North Slope from Nome all the way over Prudhoe Bay. Have you ever seen the show Ice Road Truckers? Oh, I've taken the drama out of that show. We ran a cable. It hasn't hit the show yet. We ran a cable 700 miles along, it's called the Dalton Highway in Alaska, not Ice Road Trucker. If you say Ice Road Trucker, they don't know what that means in Alaska because they don't show the show. Because that's their real life, you know? But they know it as the Dalton Highway from Fairbanks to Prudhoe. 30 feet on the side of that road, we ran 700 miles of line. They have 4G all the way right now. They can play video games on. They have better cell there in the middle of nowhere than we have in Charlotte. So it's funny how these things work out. But anyway, I learned a lot about myself in the last 5 years. Strangely enough, I've given 500 talks, live talks, and I've been including the webinars over the last 10 or 12 years to usually fairly large audiences. And what Terry was talking about is, as I've gone through my own personal journey, and we're all on our own journey, right, to balance our business life, our family life, and our social life, and how difficult all that is, and if you focus too much on one, the others, you know. So I've been on this 30-year journey of owning all these businesses, and I'm not allowed to ever run a business, just so you know, I'm just allowed to run my mouth. So I stay on the board and say, oh, here's where we're going to go with the business while others are busy actually doing stuff. So I haven't run a business in 20 years, even my investment banking business, and I don't seem to run it. But anyway, and so I've learned all this about on my journey, and here's what I've learned, and so much of it showed up. Every time we have a change in business ages, I write a book. So if any of you have read Midas Managers, that was life in the conceptual age, business age, and I explain in the book what that means. And then Midas Marketing was life in the aggregation age. And now Time Really Is Money is the third Midas book, although it doesn't say that. That's life in the transformation age. What age are we in right now? We're just leaving the transformation age, and I'm living it. Because here's one of the things I learned about myself. I live 3 or 4 years in the future. Now you say, well, Rob, that can't be because you're standing in front of us right now. But my thinking, my planning, what I'm actually engaged in right now is in the next business age, and it's a while. Like before I wrote that book, most of the stories in the Transformation Age and in the other books, the Midas books, are me. I say Susie Johnson started as me in the companies I own. It's just, you know, it's such a blah, blah, blah. Look at me, look at me. If it's every story is Rob did this and Rob did that. So right now I'm living in the machine age. Wow. I've teamed up, and Terry knows this, I told Terry this story. I've teamed up with maybe the top artificial intelligence person on earth. Someone who's actually older, who I met 30-some years ago in a coincidental thing. We didn't know each other when we met, and we've sort of convened our relationship here in the last couple of years. And he lives about 10 years in the future. So I'm the one, and I live 3 to 4 years, I'm the one who's supposed to bring his ideas and abilities into today's world, meaning that the stuff we're doing now is 3 years hence. And the stuff we're doing now is both compelling and scary to me. Meaning that machines are going to design the value proposition, product, or solution. Machines are going to make the value proposition, product, or solution, and machines are going to deliver it. All through the medium of artificial intelligence and technology. And we're there right now. This is what we're doing right now. For instance, and all his AI, artificial intelligence, is on the cloud, by the way. It's not on individual servers. Right now, anytime American Airlines worldwide has a disruption, snow, hurricane, whatever it is, his AI rebalances their whole system. Now think about that. Planes got to be at a certain gate, crews got to be at a certain place, blah, blah, blah. You can think about the millions of variables it is. The longest it's ever taken to rebalance the entire AA system using his software is 7 minutes. Now think about 10 years ago what would have happened. How many thousands of schedulers in that somewhere in Chicago or Dallas, I don't know where they'd be, but would have been working on that problem and never would have caught up. And now it's 7 minutes. He's showing me things that both, like I say, keep me up at night, both from a scared standpoint and it's compelling because I'm going to be an investor, I'm going to be the business model guy driving this change. I'm not the only one, obviously. But I'm going to be one of them. And I look at this and think, his whole thing is there's no restrictions in his worldview. All of us wake up in the morning, we think something. Why do we think it? It's our worldview, because of our life's experience, our education, what we read. Most of us have a restriction on our worldview, meaning, well, there's only so much we can do, right? And for the most part, that's true. There is no restriction on his worldview. He asked me, and I told Terry this a month ago, he says, all right, now which one do we want to totally take down in the next year? Google, Amazon, or Apple? And he's not kidding. He showed me just how to do it. And I don't have a money restriction anymore. The nice thing about I actually did another unicorn in China, but I can't talk about it, or a shot will ring out. The Chinese Secret Service will take me out of it. Because the Chinese government's my partner on that one. But I can't talk about the Alaskan one, even though it's still private. It's still in the news in Alaska. It's a big deal. And I got to tell you, this is, once you do a couple of unicorns, I have no more restrictions on money. But I have, and I don't think any of us do, by the way. One of our worldviews is, if I only had money, stop. It's not money it's not capital that's a restriction. You may not have money. I raised $1 billion with a map. Now come on, there's no restriction. The restriction is your ability, your intellectual capital to tell the story in a way that capital providers want to play. That's the restriction. And frankly, I don't think any of you have a restriction there either. You just maybe haven't picked that up and we'll fight it to just see what's out there. But anyway, so this personal journey I've been on, and now I'm into this next machine age, and what do we do? But I want to bring you into it. So I can't just start out 3 years from now, because what Terry was referencing is after 500 live talks, what I've learned is I can't talk so much about the future because most people aren't there yet. Where they're at is, all right, I've got both feet on the ground. We have some investments in the public markets. This has been an interesting day for me because I never get to hear other people talk. Because I talk, get out of there, and we go do what I'm doing. So this is the first time in 15 years I think I've actually heard other people talk, at least 10 years. But it's been interesting that we've started from the macroeconomics, the pantheon of the gods, right, public markets, which by the way is about 50% of the world's GDP is public companies generally. Who generates the other 50%?
Small
yeah, it's us. I mean, are we almost all working our daily lives in the private markets? Is that what we're doing here? I'm not exactly sure what this audience does. But I think that's probably the case. Whether you're a service provider to the private, to the knucklehead business owners, or you are the knucklehead business owner, your chances are you're in the private market somewhere, and it's real messy down here. And our worldviews prevent us more often than enable us. I tell everyone I just go from one unwinnable fight to the next, and I'm not kidding. If I know I can do something, I don't take it on, because where's the joy in that? I don't always win. At least half the time I don't win. For instance, I had decided 3 years ago I was going to single-handedly, except with a large team behind me and a big checkbook of my own, with the hog pollution problem we have in the eastern part of the state. I had whipped it scientifically and technically, but whipping the politics of fecal hog pollution is a tricky thing in the state. And so I'm still in the middle of that. Looks like I'm going to lose that one. But you take on these fights and don't think about just you got to do these AI things. Everyone in your business, you decide, and here it is. You decide how you're going to spend your time. And this is my mantra. In my nation, a number of you are involved in that. We spent about 7 or 8 years mentoring over 100 companies nationwide on how to create extreme market value in their business in a 3-year period of time. I had decided in my life 8 years ago I was going to whip this problem. any industry, any type owner, anywhere, any starting point, any time, and we ripped it. We ripped it. Can you imagine understanding how important that is to the U.S.? Because that's our number one problem, is value creation. Don't believe anything else. We consume more value than we create in this country, and we have for 20 years. And so as long as that's the case, we're going to be filling up that depleted well with IOUs, Fed notes, and all that. It's all nonsense. Until we start creating more value than we consume, we've got a real problem here as a country. It shows up in a lot of different ways, have-nots, and all that. But I have a whip today. And there's no big secret. If you don't have the book, grab it on the way out. What we learned, and this was reinforced by my 30 billionaire partner, Glenn Volatovic, from my fiber, he's worth $30 billion. What he told me, he had read a drafted book, he was so interested in this, this is 3 years ago. And he said, Robert, for some reason he calls me Robert, it might be a Russian thing. And they said, Robert, he said, 15 years ago I was a run-of-the-mill billionaire. Okay, I'll go with that. And he said, but one day it dawned on me. He said, what's the thing that's most valuable to me? And he said, time. He said, if I would just select an hourly rate that would filter out all the noise, I could then create serious value. You know, the guy was probably worth $5 billion at that point. I could create serious value. And what he did is he picked $5 billion an hour. And he said, okay, these are the activities that correlate to $5 million an hour. I'll train all the people around me that have access to me, which aren't that many, by the way, but have access to him and say, don't come to me with any problem that isn't at least a $5 million an hour problem. And he said within a year he doubled his net worth because all he did was focus on those things where he could add that much value. And he said he thought he was the only one on earth that did that, thought that way, until he ran into who? Steve Jobs. And Steve, he met Steve like 10 or 12 years ago. And Steve was at $10 million an hour, so immediately my buddy Len was at $10 million an hour. You can never one-upsmanship, right? And that conversation went, turns out, Steve, have you noticed any of the Jobs movies where Steve's always irritated that people are just knocking on his door coming in? Steve went to $10 million an hour when he walked back Apple and only wanted to deal with those issues. What's a $10 million an hour? Creating the iPhone, how's that? How's that? Creating all that he did. Every single project he did created more. What are we talking about, 10 million? If you're going to spend 100 hours on something, multiply that times 10 million, that's your bucket of gold. It better be worked out, you don't start. You don't start the project unless the numbers add up. And so, okay, well that was very interesting to me because when we were memory, Len's telling me all this about $5, $10 million. He said Warren Buffett, $10 million an hour, he found out later. He said Larry Ellison's his best buddy, $10 million an hour. You started to see, he said he's now knows 100 billionaires and each one independently came up with a high, these called hurdle rates, a high hourly hurdle rate for themselves, and they did it independent of anyone telling them. And have you ever read this, that the billionaires, this is their secret? They only focus on stuff that's high value added and only they can do. Well, now that was interesting to me hearing that story because we were mentoring from the bottom up. See, before we took on a mentoring assignment, we would have the owner journal their time. So for the prior month, any major activity, what was it? What did we find about these owners? How are they spending their time? On $5 million an hour activities or $50 an hour activities? All of them, every single one of them was spending 80–90% of their time on less than $75 an hour, meaning you could go hire somebody for $50 to do what they were doing. That's what I'm talking about. Is it possible to create a valuable business at $50 an hour? I mean, but do the math. Even if you have 3,000 of those hours a year, it's only 150 grand, right? So maybe you can take out that much, but you're not creating a valuable business doing that. And so what we learned was, and this was a shocker to me. Now, I knew, because I've been in investment banking for so long, that most owners aren't creating valuable businesses because it's not gold. Now, isn't that a shock? You would think that the high risk, because every owner has tremendous risk, but they don't demand the corresponding return. Now, why is that? There's a tremendous risk of ownership. Let's put it in numbers, 25%. You should get 25% cash on cash return on investment every year to cover your risk for typical companies that we're talking about, not IBM, that it's less than half. But for us, it's 25%. I've done all the surveys on this. It's all, oh, wait a minute, I just happen to have. All the surveys are in here. And here's a key safety factor. If you ever see one of my books that says Robert T. Slee, run. Because the two books that look like this, and Robert T. Slee are used to terrorize MBA students. They're not for you. The stuff you want to see is Rob Slee, and those are safe to you know. And I wish I was being told decisions, but I'm not. I wrote these big textbooks just to terrorize MBA students, trying to teach the MBA students something about private capital markets, which is tricky, right? So we've got all these owners out here that, why are the owners working on less than $75 an hour stuff? Is it because they're stupid? They're just idiots? No. Who's there? Anybody got an idea? Why are the owners spending all their time working on tradesperson activities? No one's ever told them different. Who's ever told them different? Do you go to business schools and undergrad or MBA and learn how to create value in private business? Has anyone? I mean, I went to all that school. I still teach maybe 25 classes a year in MBA schools around the country, so the textbooks that use it. And there's not a word, unless I say it, there's not a word in that campus about creating value in private business. The assumption is, what's the assumption for business school and MBAs? Everything you learn about large public companies applies to the private world. Is any of that true? No. None of it's true. I mean, I got Wiley, the publisher of this, left 2 pounds off this and put it on a companion website because they were afraid a 7-pound book was going to hurt people. And so this is all showing that the private capital markets are totally different in behavior and practice and structure and everything that matters in the public markets. And yet, if you go to any school today, just about anywhere in the world that this course is being taught, what's the primary message? That you can get an MBA or business undergrad and go successfully run a business. Do they ever teach you that your time, activities in the market are valued differently by the market? Meaning that your Wall Street or your Walmart greeter, the value for that activity is different than the CEO of a private company? Is there ever any talk of that? So what I'm getting at here is the whole work smarter thing. My whole life I've been taught, or told, not taught, excuse me, it's a big difference. I've been told to work smarter. Have any of you ever been told to work smarter and then the person who says that laughs knowingly and walks away, right? What did they tell you after that? You need to work smarter, but they didn't have anything to say. I have something to say about this because I wrote a book on it. The work smarter thing is no more than know what you're really good at and can add value and just work on those things. Because it turns out there's an awful lot of things that we don't know, like the whole tax thing and keeping up with all this. I have to have professionals to do all that. I just can't do it for that. But there are a few things I think I do understand. And so now what I do is, all this business ownership, these unicorns and all this, I still do some investment banking just to pay the bills. And I look at this and think, why am I standing in line at the post office right now? And that's what dawns on me whenever I'm at the post office. Why am I doing that? Because I moved. Why did I leave Charlotte 5 years ago, even though I have a house here, I'm only here a few months here now? Because when I went to $100,000 an hour for my hurdle rate, my partner says I work too cheap, I should be $1 million. When I went to $100,000 an hour, there's only so many of those activities in my greater Charlotte life. And so I had to go outside. I spent 4 months here in Hong Kong usually. I'll be in Alaska for months. I'll be up in Arctic. I'll be where I can find these $100,000 an hour activities. And so speaking, could I ever find an audience that would want to receive $100,000 an hour ideas and then be able to act on them? There's some of you right now that are. So I can't say no, none of you. No, that's not the case. Some of you spend 5 hours or 10 hours a week on these sorts of, what is that $100,000? You're changing or creating industries. Some of you change and create industries, so it's fair to say that you're spending time on that. But the fact of the matter is I can't speak anymore about these things that are most important to me because, and this is what I was really telling Terry, is that the stuff that really is in my heart, the stuff I'm dealing with, it doesn't convey well to general audiences. Some of what I'm saying will convey well to you today, but the stuff that really is inside of me that I want to just scream about, the stuff that's on the edge that I'm dealing with today, for instance, it just doesn't convey well. And you sit there and look at, I'll be the crazy one, right? The crazy guy from Charlotte. And so that's why I stopped all the speaking. Now, at some point, we got to bring everybody along on this because we can't fix this. If half the U.S. GDP is privately held, and I've proven without a shadow of doubt in all my books that 80% of private business owners are destroying value in their business. Not creating, destroying, meaning they're not generating returns to equal their cost of capital. We got problems. This is a problem. This is a problem we all have, right? Because I heard the guy say, and I agree with it, we want each generation to be the next, to have it better, but how does that work when 30 to 40% of your GDP is going down? Because if you're not creating value, you're destroying value. What does that mean? Brokers of the world, tell me what percent of businesses do you find that you can sell for what the owner thinks it's worth? What percent?
Zero.
Small. It tends towards zero. It tends towards zero. So what is the owner telling you there? My business is worth $30 million. They speak that way for some reason. It might be worth $30 million. And you look at that and say, well, wait a minute. What they're really saying has nothing to do with market value. That's the value that they have as an owner that's stored to them for a variety of reasons, because they realize they're probably going to have to pay some taxes, and that's what they need after the sale to be able to maintain their lifestyle, which of course is never going to happen, because 90-some% of the owners are never going to sell or transfer or exit the business for what they need to keep there. And so this is a real problem that affects society in a real way, because where does most of the new employment generated from in our economy? Is it the pantheon of the gods companies? Not at all. Their goal over time is to produce employment, right? And I can tell you, here's my quintillion numbers, by the way. $10 million EBITDA per employee. Uh-oh. The AI numbers are totally different. It used to be when I grew up 100 years ago when I first got business, if you could do a couple $100,000 in revenues per employee in manufacturing, that was great. You could make a few bucks. Then that went up to $500,000. I'm talking $10 million EBITDA, not revenues, per employee. The stuff I'm seeing now that I'm even involved in is so shocking, even I can't believe the metrics. Now, what does that mean? We don't have 1,000 employees. We don't need 20 employees. We're going to change the entire internet structure of the world, not just the Arctic. Curvature of the world. Turns out geometry really matters in the world. Curvature, because we're over the North Pole, literally right by Santa, right by the North Pole. That's the fastest cable in the world, as opposed to going all the way around, because distance matters. And so you look at these things and say, wait a minute, is every business going to be subjected to this artificial intelligence meets technology meets boom? Hey, isn't the investment business already seeing this? Who's in the investment business? I mean, you've got to be seeing some, high frequency trading, some of this balanced portfolio stuff. My mantra is, yet this decade, every single business is going to be influenced. So the question is, if it isn't already, and it probably is, just know. So the question is, what do you do about it? This is the question of the day. What do we do about it? This is us now, us talking. What do we do about it, knowing that the machine age is upon us, and we really can't wait for 2 years for Rob to write the next book to tell me what to do. So we got to get in this game now, because in 2 years from now, it's changed. It's different. Machine creates, machine designs, machine creates, machine delivers. So, I don't care if you're a plumber, electrician, I don't care what you are. You got to make peace with this. And so each one of us has to fight this battle individually. Now, I'll tell you that the best way to go about it isn't technical at first. What it is how are you spending your time. Do a time inventory of yourself right now. Journal yourself for a month. I'm not saying for a year, just for a month. And if you're not at least at $500 an hour activities, you got trouble. Because that's just the bare minimum of creating value. So what are we talking about? $50 per hour is the value proposition. You're being hired because your company's being hired because of you. And that can be, you can be doing any sort of service. $500 is you're creating and managing all the value propositions around your business. Have you ever thought it that way? If you want the best employees, you want the best customers, you want the best vendors, you got to create compelling value propositions for all your stakeholders. You got to create them, you got to manage them well. That's $500 an hour activity. That's difficult enough, right? Don't you ever feel sometimes in business, man, keep everybody happy around me as a full-time job? Well, that kind of is, really. And $5,000 an hour activity is where you're knocking it down. That's where you're spending 1 day a week, by the way, in your business. That's it. You're spending that on culture building, improving your culture. You're spending that on improving models and selecting the right niches. Because I start out most of my talks, by the way. My name's Rob, and I'm a niche-aholic. And you say?
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Thank you. We have some other niche-aholics in the room. And because my worldview on business is, for the middle market now, and this has changed in the last 10 years, is The new middle market company is an amalgamation of niches that hang off the same intellectual capital tree trunk. So imagine a big oak tree. And your tree trunk is all the stuff you know. Intellectual capital is a consulting word to what you know about. And then off that know-how, you leverage a half dozen niches, each doing 6 or 8 million in sales, each niche generating $1 million to $2 million in EBITDA. That's the new middle market company. It's not a monolithic. You do one thing really well, and you have one niche. That's really tough because as an owner, we're all gardeners of our niches, right? Because the market's wanting to take away 1 or 2 of those niches every year, so we got to be creating 1 or 2 niches. Now, where's the niche come from? Yeah, unmet market. And how I find niches, by the way, is on airplanes, or I'll go to conferences. I'll say, "What have you been trying to?" Or somebody who's buying services for a company, I'll say, "What have you been trying to buy or source in the last year you just can't find?" I hear that 3 times, and I'm investigating. And it's amazing. If you go to just one conference, and you're not even in that industry, and just start asking that question from booth to booth, it's amazing how you'll find out portfolios of needs that no one's meeting, because people, for some reason, don't ask that question. And I think it is because they're so busy pushing what they have, right? They're not asking, okay, what do you need so I can pull you into my universe? And so that's one way I get into new industries. I just constantly ask, what have you been trying to source? And you take that on top of this new delivery mechanism of AI technology, where apparently we're going to be able to get any idea or product to anyone on the earth for inconsequential cost. And that's, and there you got it. I mean, that's what we're all facing, whether we know it or not. That's our life. And so I would encourage you to journal your time, figure out where you're at, get to that $5,000 level. Now, we stopped at $5,000 an hour in mentoring. When we mentored, that took us 3 years to get people from $50 an hour to $5,000, because that's quite a behavioral change, right? You have to totally change how you look at an hour. So we took all of our hours from 80 hours a week, typically 70 to 80, down to 6 hours. Now, isn't that counterintuitive? That the higher you go up on what I call this value ladder, this dollar per hour activity thing, the less you work. Why is that? How can that be? Yes, there's only so many $5,000 an hour problems. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, some periods it can be real intense. The period you're selecting the next unwinnable fight, and you're trying to resource it, and all that, that's intense. But for the most part, you have 6 or 8 hours a week of work. So everybody we mentored, the issue was not 6 days a week anymore, 6 or 8 hours. Now that may not be all one day, maybe a couple hours here, a couple hours there. Because if you're in your walls, so to speak, wherever your facility is, whatever your facility is, how many $5,000 an hour activities could possibly be generated there? There's a few, but I mean, some weeks won't be any. And so what are you doing? If you're there, what are you doing? You're working on stuff that doesn't matter. And so it took me the longest time to get comfortable, and here it is, doing nothing. In my world of $100,000 per hour, am I better off? I'm better off just doing nothing than working on $500 an hour. The post office. What am I doing? Well, at least I use the kiosk, right? So I can make peace with the kiosk. And but see, I have to constantly ask myself, okay, what am I doing? Now, I'm better off just thinking about what I should be doing than I am actually tactically doing anything. That takes a while. That's a behavioral change, because we're all uncomfortable doing nothing, right? Because what have we all been trained to do? Work hard. What does work hard even mean? Well, it means busy. Your hands are busy, your mouth's busy, you're doing stuff, you're running. Well, more power to you, but man, that, if you can find a $100 an hour activity that is over that, I'm shocked. And so I'm not encouraging anybody in this room to go running up this value ladder and start working at $5,000 an hour the whole day long. That isn't the way it works. It's like climbing any ladder. You climb one rung at a time. You journal your time right now. You say, okay, I'm at $100 or whatever it is, doesn't matter. I'm at 100, I want to go to 500. You study my stuff, and you say, what are those activities and how can I get there? You plan it out. It may take a few months of planning. You start working just 5 or 6, 8 hours a week on those activities. You got to pay the bills, people. So you can't just go, oh, I'm going to go up the ladder. Because if you go charging up the ladder, you fall over, just like a regular ladder climb. And so you still pay the bills on your $100 an hour stuff, but you start plotting and planning to get to 500. Once you get to about a day's worth of $500 an hour activities a week, what's going to happen? Oh, you got a taste for it. When you get a taste for it, you can only go north. The problem is, once you start this value ladder climb, you can never go back. I'm warning you. I started 8 years ago as I created all this in my head. I started 8 years ago at $2,500 an hour. Then I went to 5,000. Then actually, I tend to do hour yearly jumps. And then 10. Then I jumped to 25. Then 50. Now 100. And here's the problem. I can only see $1 million an hour. Don't we all think $1 million an hour is a lot? What's your first thought? When I tell you I can teach you how to work for $1 million an hour, what's your first thought? That's a lot of money. I mean, that is a lot of money. My $10 million an hour partner tells me that that's the problem. That I'm a farm boy from Toledo, and I am. And that seems like a lot of money to me. And he said he's going to do whatever it takes to beat that out of me, because the fact of the matter is, that's available. It's just a matter of the mentality of understanding that I can only work on certain things, because I can work on those things. Right now, I'm working on some things that generate $1 million an hour, but I'm doing it at $100,000 as my hurdle rate, but I'm exceeding it. Like the Alaskan deal, I had a $50,000 hurdle rate when I did. I greatly exceeded that in terms of the net wealth creation. So maybe he's right. Maybe I need to be more selective in the fights I pick by using a higher beginning hurdle rate. My worldview is preventing some of that. I'm trying to get over that. Somebody help me, just kick me in the buttocks to get me over that. But we all have that problem. What you'll find is, as you start your own personal ladder climb, all of a sudden, it's a little scary because I'm working 6 hours a week. Now, people around you are going to notice this. They're going to say, what's wrong with, Terry? And it's not like you're not doing anything. What I do is I constantly study, I constantly read not business books. What's the audience, what's the dollar per hour written for the typical business book, including this? What's the hour rate that I have to write to for an audience?
25.
Yes. And well, that's no good. Reading business books is no good. So I read the social scientists, people like Malcolm Gladwell. I read the futurists, I read the AI stuff. I read the stuff where it's going. It's sort of like the old Wayne Gretzky thing. Don't go where the puck is, go where it's going. Skate where it's going. And that's kind of the way I look at business. If I read business books, that's where the puck is. And I don't have any. I don't know where you guys are in your life, but for me, where the puck is very exciting. What's exciting is the unknown, where it's going. And so I can't read normal stuff. But there's a lot of stuff to be taken in. I swear the science fiction writers have the right. When I talk to my AI guy in Florida, it's the same as walking on the deck of the Starship Enterprise and Commander Data walks up. That's exactly how I feel. Talking to him. Okay, now I'm going to reorient myself here because this is a whole different deal. Machine age is, every age I show is becoming more and more exponential because technology allows for exponential change. And our DNA is wired arithmetic, right? So we change ever so slowly. But technology didn't care about us. Technology just changes leaps and bounds. And so the transformation age is the first purely exponential business change. And that's how you can have a half dozen big companies and an Amazon and things create so much value, a disproportionate amount of value because they're on the curve. They're on that marginal curve of exponential change. We can do the same thing in our spheres of influence. We can be on that curve too, but you got to pick some fights that are uncomfortable. It doesn't come picking normal stuff. You're going to be looking at your business in the next, hopefully after this talk, totally differently, because you're going to be trying to figure out, okay, now where do I take this so I can generate? Here's the challenge. So next year, 2019, I can generate 10 times more revenues without any more people resources. How's that? That's a good challenge. And if you say, well, that can't be done, I'll guarantee you, I can bet you anything. I can figure it out. That's what I do, figure that kind of stuff out. Now, it's not going to be easy. What we learned in mentoring, when we were out there creating all these niches, is because that's what we did. We mentor owners how to take their intellectual, figure out what we really know, the know-how, and then go create all these niches quickly. What we figured is it was taking us 10 iterations of failure before we'd get traction in a niche. 10 times, oh, that didn't work. Rats, move over 2 degrees, well, that didn't work. Move 6 degrees this way, well, that didn't work. Fail fast, fail cheap, right? That's the mantra. What happens once you get traction after 10 times? Do you have to worry about the competition failing 10 times? What happens with most of your competition if they fail 10 times?
up.
They give up. They give up after 3. Human nature is to give up after 3 failed attempts. Come on. You see it in your own life. I mean, after 3, it's not going to work. Well, what you hear is that'll never work, right? And what we learned was that if we figured it out inside of 7 or 8 iterations, I'd blow up the niche. It was too easy. Somebody else is going to knock that off. It doesn't matter if it's the Chinese, the Koreans, whoever it is. So there's some magic around between 8 and 10 iterations of failure that nobody else would go through that pain. Because it's painful what you got to do this. I mean, there's a certain joy in it too, because you're accomplishing, but along the way you can't really see the joy, you can't feel the joy. I don't feel the joy yet from what I've done in the Arctic. And because it just sucked my soul right out of my body. No, did I say that out loud? And I would encourage none of you to ever do a unicorn, because what happens is you got to bet more than you can afford to lose along the way, and when you get it done, it just has sucked the soul right out of your body. That's where I am with that. So I'll never do another unicorn. What I'll do is these selected AI messing. I'm going to mess with AI in the next 10 years. I'm going to selectively take different things away from people. And that's what we're doing. And just because I enjoy it, plus it's better for the customer. I mean, everybody's going to benefit. And except for won't take it away from them. But that's just the way it is. They got to be a gardener of their niches, like I got to be a gardener of my niches. And so journal your time. Start moving up your own value ladder. Don't let your worldview be a stop. Don't be worried about, on Tuesday I'm studying on Tuesday, or I've got a free day just to think. Stare at the ceiling a lot. It's just shocking. It makes everyone around me so nervous. Because I do a lot of this. And I'm really thinking about stuff, but you never know, because you can't see inside. And so, I really have become thoughtful, and I really have become spiritual, not in an official religious way, but in all right, what is this really going to take? Don't kid myself about this. What is this really going to take in this unwinnable fight? How do I have to organize it? What's my business model? What resources do I have to need to bring to it? Who are my partners? Because remember, I only run my business. And you look at all this, and I have to be really honest with myself. Can I add enough value for this? There are some fights I'm just not the right person. I just don't have. I can think of a dozen fights I've passed in the last month. It wasn't me. I couldn't see it. I couldn't create that vision before I started. I always will accept the impossible or the unwinnable fight if I can convince myself that I can see it. I can see that this is going to be built, even though I know that it's going to be an EKG to get there. Because aren't all our lives that way? They're EKGs. I've never had a linear win. I've had some linear losses, but most of mine, I have. But most of my wins are EKGs. But if I can visualize that something good is going to happen here, and I use 3-year buckets, it takes me usually 3 years to do anything. It took 5 in the Arctic. Normally I get something done in 3. And if I can visualize that something good's going to happen in 3 years, then I'll undertake it today and just get ready for the iterative failure. And on that, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Anybody have any questions? Overwhelming.
So how do you overcome the world belief? When you're like, oh, I can't do that, stop.
I haven't yet. I've overcome it.
Or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Well, I've overcome it up to $100,000 an hour, maybe $500,000 an hour, because some of the stuff I'm doing generates that. The problem is when you get to $1 million to $5 million, you're only taking on stuff that changes the world. I didn't mention that part. $50,000 an hour, you change industries or creative. At $5 million, you're changing the world.
Sure.
Now, the AI stuff is world changing. All of it. I don't care how small you try to niche it in, it's world changing. So in some sense, I mean, just because I'm picking AI fights, it's going to be world changing. But to do that math and to think that you're going to do a single project over 3 years that's going to create a couple billion in value, which you get 300 million, go through that thought process. Because I think the people that grow up, I did not, but the people that grow up in a lot of wealth, they have a little bit easier time doing that. They probably don't have the skills to see it through. So none of us are in perfect position to do this. Yes.
What was the first time you realized, like, oh, I just put this into action, I just dedicated myself to working on a higher value problem?
Well, the first time I laid it out structurally was 8 years ago, because I took on this national mentoring fight. We were going to aggressively mentor not only the owners, but their direct reports. on how to move up their own individual value ladders. So it was 8 years ago when I created the connection between what the market, how the market assigns value and what those activities are. As far as I know, nowhere in the literature, nowhere else has that been established. First day of business school, what they ought to tell you is, look, what you work on and how you spend your time matters. That should be the first lesson. They do that for corporations in terms of net present value analysis, and you do that, but we don't do that personally, and I think it's more important personally because no matter if you're working for a corporation or working for yourself, time is the scarcest resource. I used to work 100 hours a week to get to attract and gain these skill sets, but after a while, all you're doing is working on the same thing over and over again. It's like a hamster wheel. And then it was 8 years ago when I got off that. So. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
So, I want to ask about your work in AI. That's where you're going to put most of your time. What's your take and what is your thinking on the void of ethics in the machine age?
Yeah, it worries me. What worries me the most, especially regarding China, let me just give you, for instance, I spent so much time in China, the government is my partner, so I have an unusual view here, and I've been dealing with them so long. Chinese don't have a Judeo-Christian view, framework for right and wrong. It doesn't exist. For us, if I say right and wrong, we all know what I'm talking about. We know when we're on the wrong side of something. We know. See, that doesn't exist in China. When you're negotiating with the Chinese, and I take advantage of you, in China that's considered to be your fault, that you let it happen. There is no right and wrong concept there. And so the word ethics, if you were to talk to, if I was to ever talk to my Chinese partners and use that word ethics, I'm not even sure that word exists in Mandarin, because that concept doesn't exist. And so what worries me the most about it isn't the ethics, what worries me the most about it is the displacement of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people. In the way, I don't know who the consumers are. You know, my mantra in the Time Really Is Money book is that 2% of us have escaped from the matrix.
Right.
And those, all 100% of value creation in the world, it's not just 2% of Americans, 2% of every society has 2% that escape. They are responsible for 100% of the idea creation, business models, patents, proprietary this. But they have to sell like we all do. We have to sell back into the matrix because that's where the customers are. Now the machine age is disrupting that in a big way because how are the customers going to afford to pay it? See, outside the matrix, there aren't enough of us just to sell each other. So we have to sell back into the matrix. And that's the tricky part of this in the machine age. I don't have it figured out. I've been spending a lot of time staring at the ceiling, thinking, how can we make it, I'm the only person thinking about this, how can we make this more inclusive? What do we have to change? And I think we have to bring it all the way back to kindergarten to make it more inclusive. I talk in the book about the transformation age is the first age, it's whole brain thinking. So you have both your left brain, your linear brain, and your right brain, your creative brain, come together for whole brain thinking, and that's what is required. We don't teach that in school, right? We're a left brain education system. And so, reading, writing, arithmetic, excuse me, maybe 100 years ago, maybe. And, but we don't, if Johnny or Sally shows too much creativity, well, they're given Ritalin or something, and so it's a real problem. And so what happens is, it's self-selected in every culture that 2% just are mainly right-brained but have enough technical ability to be left-brained, and they're the ones that create everything. And so we don't generate that in our system. One time I was able to talk to the prior president of China about this issue, because he wrote a big edict to China that we're going to create 1 million Steve Jobs in China. And I was able to get a note to him. I said, no, because we didn't create one in the US. Steve Jobs was not a product of our education system. You cannot create people like that. You can create an environment where a larger percentage of people will be like that, but you don't create those people. It's not the way it is. Yes.
Can you just talk about a couple of AI niches?
That I'm working on now?
No, like what?
I'll give you for instance, we're doing a big M&A deal right now, and we have 10,000 documents in the Dropbox contracts going back 30 years, and you'll appreciate this. And there's all kinds, it's a chemical company sale, all kinds of possible contingent liabilities and stuff, asbestos, and stuff that happened 30 years ago. It used to be you'd have to hire a law firm of 20 junior associates to go through all those documents. AI did it in 2 hours. 2 hours. Bang. It spit out 2 pages of this is what you need, these are the contracts, this is your exposure, just worry about this in 2 hours. And I'm telling you, and it's the whole thing. Think about what they're doing with hips now. A machine will need a new hip. A machine will design that new hip, 3D print that new hip. A human is still inserting that hip, but now take it to tissue. The next round of this is human organ replacement with tissue, because they're doing it now in animals. You need a new kidney. There's no fear of rejection if they use your own tissue. That's where we're going. You go check into the hospital, machine will scan you, okay, that's what your new kidney's gonna look like. It will manufacture it right in the room next door, and then I presume that a human for the near term will insert that kidney, but they're doing a lot of robotic surgery now. Whoa. I mean, it's just, every once in a while, my buddy Richard, the AI guy, will say something and it just blows my mind. Because, maybe I've seen it on TV or I've read about it in science fiction, but I always thought that stuff would happen after I died. I never thought it'd be during my lifetime that, whoa, this is happening right now. But it does cause this have-not problem. What it does is it exacerbates a problem that economic systems around the world have already enshrined. That there's only a small percent of us that are globally competitive, and we're garnering 90% of the benefit. Now, ultimately, that's feudalism. Lords and ladies of the manor, now how did that work out? That's going to be the same here. I just don't know when. If we don't do something to head this off, it'll be the same thing. And I take no joy in being the guy that has the high walls. Well, that's not why I was put on Earth. I was put on Earth to figure out something more inclusive, and so far I can't figure it out. Yes?
Are you going to spend time working on how to figure that out?
Yeah, that I am along the way. And I sort of got it in Alaska, because what I did there is, even though we only had a dozen or so employees, what we did is we have all these outsourced contracts that keep an awful lot of people busy with maintenance and all that. So I generate a lot of jobs through that, even though my company. So I tend to do that. Now, AI is a little different. AI is a little scary that way, because you have extremely highly compensated people to design the AI. Here's where my guys go. You know how IBM has Watson, and that's their AI? Now, healthcare companies can call in for a big fee, and I don't know what it is, can call in and use Watson to go through large data, big data, to find niches and nuance. My guy says within 18 months, there'll be a dozen of those, including his, out on the server, and you have an hourly toll for your business, and you can select. You can cut through all the big data in your industry, and bang, out comes your one page, and say, this is where you should go. See, what percent of us are going to adapt to that quickly? And I'm telling you, be that percent, because, there is a certain thing that we want to make sure we're okay and our kids and our sphere of influence is okay, and that's how you do it. But most people aren't going to be able to participate in that. I know they're not, because they're not set up for it. They're set up to fail in that environment right now. And so, yeah, take a deep breath. That's where we're at. Yes.
So do you consider your staring at the ceiling a meditative process?
Yes, it is for me. It calms me, aside from the blood pressure medicine. It calms me. And I wish I was kidding on that. It calms me, because if I stay in the fight, it's like when I go to Silicon Valley. Has anybody been out here for 2 weeks straight? Oh, God, don't. I go out there for about the third day, I need a 2-month vacation. It's that fast. Oh, here's a little tidbit that just shocked me. I don't know if you've read this. 10 years ago, I was taking American cutting-edge technology over to China to get implemented in their markets, because I could raise the money there and get it. Can I do that today? The Shanghai VC community is bigger than Silicon Valley. It has more technology, more money, more participants. So they laugh now when I bring Americans. I don't do it. So all that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years. So we've so educated the Chinese kids that now they don't stay here the way they did. They go back. And now they've recreated Silicon Valley and Shanghai. They have a bigger river. That shocked me. I thought I had another 10 years ago. So, but it is what it is. What are you going to do?
First thing, I want to make sure I get a book.
Sure.
Because I drove all the way down.
Up there.
I drove all the way down here from Cleveland to see this guy. Second thing is, have you talked to any people in the political structure about this?
Don't get me
And
started.
what's your view on that?
Don't get me started. I've been in the matrix. What I've learned, and this is the most important thing I'll say, what I've learned is the matrix is real. It's made up of our institutions, both government, media, education, all with their own agendas. It's not a monolithic whole. So if I can find a part of the matrix, like I did for my telecom deal, and I can do a little finger shake, they'll let me come in and disrupt part of the matrix because they want more wealth and power. I cannot go in and blow up the matrix. Only in the matrix will we can that happen. What I can do is make peace with one part of the matrix to let me in to do my thing. Now, that could change with AI. They're really concerned in the matrix. I've had 100 conversations with senators, and for a variety of reasons, I'm at that level. And they're more concerned about the status quo than where it's all going. They're more concerned with keeping the puck on the ice where it is than where it's going, because it's just too mind-blowing for them. They can't, even if I paint them an exact picture of what's going to happen, they can't deal with it. They're ill-equipped to deal with it. And as I think I would be too. I mean, think about what we're talking about. I just admitted I can't solve this inclusiveness problem. I'm going to work on it the next couple of years, but I bet you I don't solve it. I'll bet you the best I can do is make some recommendations to change K through 12 in a certain way such that will lead to a higher percentage of people that can that ain't none of it going to happen. Because the matrix doesn't want that kind of thing to happen. That's not in the best interest. The matrix controls everything. It's not in their interest to let that happen. They'll just barely put up with me. And the only reason they put up with me is they make more money and they have more control. That's the only reason. If it's not for that, they don't put up with me. Yes.
We know it's coming, but as I understand it, most business owners are brick and mortar.
Yeah. Well, even the ones that aren't have a lot of work to do. That's why I say 80 to 90%, and I can prove it in this book, I prove it. 80 or 90% of the owners are not creating value to their business. Now, what they are is they're lifestylers, because along the way it just became easier to just get to the lake on Saturday, don't worry about it. You know, get your, whatever it is, couple $100 grand out, whatever. The problem is when they go to get out of that business, there's nothing there. Almost always, when we're called to sell a business, it's extremely disappointing to the owner to hear what we say the market will pay for that business. And the reason is a lifestyle business, nobody wants to buy a job anymore. Very few. Few people want to buy that job because it's really, if you're a young person, this is why millennials don't want any part of the boomers' businesses. If you're a young person and you know that the handshake with technology is here now, but you're seeing a business that's distributing toilets like they did 40 years ago, you just go out and create that. You don't need to buy that. And so that's why most of these boomers are trapped. It's sort of like the family farm 60 years ago when I was growing up back in Ohio. You were trapped in the family farm unless you sold it to your kids, because back then 100-acre parcels weren't, you know, they really weren't transferable. And that's kind of the way most of these boomer-owned businesses are now. They're not transferable.
Like